what we are doing, what I am teaching is I am teaching um, Samatha and Insight practices. And this is the way that I was taught. And included in that is, what we can call the non-dual practices. Included in that is the teachings from Mahamudra and Dzogchen, the teachings on nature of mind. All of that is included under the umbrella of Samatha and Insight, or Samatha and Vipassana. Um, and I've been teaching and I've been pointing out more so recently on how, with our daily practice, which is really the way that you develop the path, or you deepen your connection with this practice, that we try to include both aspects of samatha, of the concentration, and the insight practice. And the way it's been taught here is the samatha, we're working with the breath. We open it up to the body. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but I think this is really important. And then at some point, we open it up to the non-clinging awareness itself. And we learn to rest in that awareness. We learn to investigate that awareness. The teachings of looking at the five hindrances and looking at thought and all of that, they are included in the insight practice, but they are really moving us towards this place where we can look at mind and not be pulled away by its activity. So we develop that capacity for samatha practice. We develop that capacity is in some ways with a samatha, you could say you're learning to take a seat. You're learning to sit and watch and not be pulled away. But strict samatha practice is just keeping your attention on one point. And we are only doing that if we are doing that for a short period of time. The problem is if you just do concentration practice, your practice becomes fragile. You're easily pushed away. When we are in retreat at the Dharma Center, or we're doing our own retreat, perhaps on Zoom or at home, we tend to build up more concentration. And then when we go into the world, we can feel quite fragile because we're not used to all of this stuff coming at us. So when we develop the samatha and the insight together, then we move between that really calming meditation and then the ability to open it up and to be with whatever occurs. And of course, since we are in life, we ultimately we have to learn how to be with whatever comes up. And finding our peace, if you will, in that, finding our wisdom in that, finding our compassion in that. There's a saying, any fool can be a good captain on a calm sea. But how are we when the waves get a little bit rough? So we are constantly developing and monitoring ourselves. We are constantly working with the two aspects of the mind that's focused, that's concentrated, that's building up calm, and then the mind that's opening up to awareness and watching. That's what that's what the practice is. That's what we're doing. So we understand that, and it's really important that you might not be able to sit every morning, but it's really important that you meditate on a regular basis. And I think it's really important that you try to do retreats a few times a year. So this is what I'm working with. This is what we're working with. This is what I'm presenting. So I think we're all clear on that, but I will probably continue to say it many more times. Um, of course, in this process of working with the mind, we are presented with all of our proclivities, all of our conditionings, and we are developing the practice so we can work in a skillful way to what the mind brings up, to how we react to the world, to how we react to events around us. We're working with thought patterns, emotions, relationships, all of that good stuff. So in the last few weeks, I've been pointing towards that aspect of stillness, that aspect of quietness within ourselves, and learning how to work with that, learning how to um, rest in that, learning how to see it or identify it within our experience. This is more nature of mind work. So we're working with a samatha, and then we start to look at mind. We're looking at awareness at this point. One of the ways that we begin to identify awareness, one of the ways that we begin to identify that stillness or that quietness within us is through watching all the activity, through watching, observing, understanding impermanence. We see this constant parade of phenomena that come up within us, in the mind, outside of the mind, if you will. We observe it, but we also observe the constant change. And in the knowing of the constant change, the aspect that is still, the aspect that is not that change, starts to become apparent. And it becomes apparent when we are able to observe all this activity and not be pulled away by it, not be distracted by it. We don't see it because we're distracted, we're pulled away. But if we really look at thought, we see that it comes and goes on its own. We don't have to do anything about it. We get so fascinated with the content of our minds. We get so fascinated with thought. But when we don't hold on to it, what happens? It comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. So from this seat of samatha, we observe the activity. We observe the constant movement of activity. And within that, we start to get a glimpse of the stillness. We start to get a glimpse of the quietness. So we learn to rest in that place of awareness, in that place of watching. It's not something we're constructing. It's something that we become aware of through the observation of activity, through the observation, through the non-clinging awareness of activity. If we're clinging to it, we won't see the stillness. We'll see what it is that we're clinging to, and that becomes our reality. And in some ways, it's that simple. Is we observe and we don't get distracted by what we're observing. And we reside in what's there, what's already there, before the thought, during the thought, and after the thought. We begin to notice, perhaps, that maybe there's not such a difference between the awareness when there's activity and when there's no activity. So this is the insight practice. We start to develop the capacity to abide in this stillness, to abide in this presence, whatever the activity is, whatever's taking place. We develop the samatha because it takes a lot of practice. But once we begin to see this, once we really begin to see this, then it's just seeing it. Once again, we're not creating it. The thing that we are truly seeking within ourselves is simply just this presence. And when we truly reside or we truly see that, then that's what the practice, that's what the path becomes. It's just seeing that again and again. And you get lost and you remind yourself and you come back to that. So this is the basis. This is the basis of the work. But we also, it's just as important to identify the patterns that keep us bound, the patterns that we continually cling to. I got a good one for the day. Seeking the approval. Do we seek approval from others, or do we seek approval from ourselves? And why do we seek approval from others? And what does that change, if anything? Are we somebody that is constantly trying to seek the approval of other people? What are we filling with that? What need are we filling? If we were truly connected with presence, there would be no need for that. The approval is already incorporated in the presence. It's already incorporated in who we are. We're okay. We're really, really, truly okay. But don't we spend a lot of time seeking approval of others? It's a tough one. It's a deep one for most of us. But in a moment of the recognition of this presence, in a moment, all of that just falls away. So when you catch that proclivity within yourself, and this is what we do, is we find these habitual patterns of thinking that tend to infuse so much of our daily experience. We identify them. We identify them. We know them when they're in operation. And then we look for the stillness or the presence that's already there. And in that moment, we see the falseness of the pattern, right? It's just a pattern. It's impermanent. It comes and it goes. When we truly shine the light of awareness, the light of this presence on any proclivity or pattern that's taking place, it disappears on its own. So we develop the capacity, the mindfulness, right? To say, this is what's getting played out here. And we see it for what it is. But when we've developed this practice of working with abiding in awareness, abiding in identifying the underlying stillness or quietness that's in all moments, when we develop that within our being, then that changes our relationship with all of the content, with all of the proclivities that come up. Sometimes we need to work with stuff in different ways, for sure. But sooner or later, we come to this point. There's a saying in one of the texts, naturally liberating whatever you meet. The quality of awareness, the light of awareness sees the activity of mind for what it is, impermanent and not self. So, Samatha and Insight practice, developing the capacity to be calm, to settle in, developing the mindfulness not to be pulled away, and then we look at awareness itself. We look at presence itself. And we develop the insight to see that that is there at all times. It is everywhere. It's not dependent on conditions. You say it's our natural state of being. And we develop that capacity, that way of seeing. And then we are in a place where the awareness can naturally liberate whatever it meets. It's already happening. It's more a level of seeing. Seeing the wave for the wave. The wave's not the ocean. The wave's not the water. All of those metaphors that we hear. But interesting place to look is seeking approval. Immediately we're in a situation and we want something from it, right? We want something as opposed to just residing in, being with, being present. You walk into a relationship, walk into a conversation, walk into a situation, walk into a room. Of course, we do what we do, but at your depth, can you just reside in the awareness, in that sense of quietness or stillness, and catch your wanting, catch your not wanting, catch your needing? Because if we don't see it, then we're caught by it. But if we see it, we're not caught by it. And when we develop this capacity of residing in stillness, of residing in presence, it makes it a lot easier. We don't have to battle with ourselves so much. All of this stuff can come and go. All this stuff can come and go. You're not perfect. That happens. But when we develop this capacity, it changes everything. This capacity to see that stillness, to see that awareness. So catch your proclivities, catch our proclivities. Catch the movements, the wantings, and reside in the awareness, reside in the stillness. Then we don't follow. We don't feed it.